start my talk this morning by reading two value statements. One of them is ours here at SLCA, and it says this: SLCA is a community of inclusion, welcoming the spiritual and life paths of all people. That's our value statement. And now I want to share one from the Centers for Spiritual Living, which we're all also a part of. It says, we value, embrace, and celebrate the individual uniqueness and contribution of all people as they express through differences of gender, ethnicity, culture, history, experience, talents, and sexual orientation. The Centers for Spiritual Living. So as David Aurelio said, this morning we start our February talks on diversity and inclusion. Do you know why we value diversity? We value diversity because it's a nice and perfect thing to do, yes. But we value diversity because it is the truth of God itself. The inherent nature of the divine. And we here in this center, in this teaching, it is our intention to live in as close alignment with spiritual truth as we can. That's what we're here for. Ernest Holmes says that we can know about the nature of the Creator by looking at its creation. And I think that's true of all creation. You know, when you go into a museum or an art gallery and you see work by an artist, you have a window into the mind of that artist. You kind of know what they're thinking and what they value. When you listen to a musician's composition, the lyrics come from the life of that musician, and you have an idea more about how they think and how they approach life. Even the tone of the music comes out of the creation of that musician. Or maybe you're looking at fashion. The design that a designer has made shows you a little bit about whether they value order and symmetry, or perhaps surprise or the avant-garde, right? So you have an idea about the Creator by looking at its creation. And that is the case of the mind of the divine as well. So when we look at the nature of all life, we can see that diversity is simply a core value of the intelligence that created everything. You know, just look around you. Not one thing in nature is just like another thing in nature. Every one is unique and different. Ernest Holmes says this on page 313 of our textbook. He says this: we are individual entities in a universe that creates the background and the foreground for each of us, but each one of us is unique, different, but fundamentally alike. So paradoxically, we are all one, but we are all unique and different expressions of that one. See, life measures out to each of us this energy that we live as. And we become unique in many different ways. We're first of all, we're born unique. We're born with certain, think about what you're born with. You're born with your personality, a unique personality. And if there are moms in the room that have more than one child, you know that they come out with a unique personality. Each one is different. And then we're born with our genetic makeup, that kind of dictates what our hair color is going to be, or our skin tone, or perhaps our height and our weight, and other things that are based on our genetics. And then we're born into a certain family or a certain situation that greatly influences, who we are and what we become in life. So we take all this stuff that we're born with, and then we layer on top of that millions of choices, millions of thoughts, millions of beliefs, different responses and reactions to things. And those are the things that make us unique and very, very different. That's what makes me, me, and you, just divinely different than any other. So I really enjoy looking at the diversity of life that is found in nature. And I've had the fun of being able to travel to Hawaii several times, mostly because I had some friends who lived there for a while, so I had a place to stay over there. And the very first time I got to go, I had a really good friend named Keith who was going with me, and Keith and I decided to take scuba lessons, because I always thought if I ever get to Hawaii, I want to really, really experience the water and the sea life that is available there. And so I signed up for scuba lessons. Now, I was very, very disappointed, because one of the unique things about me is that my ears will not depressurize. And I was so profoundly disappointed when my scuba instructor said, "Laine, I'm so sorry, but you're just one of those people that can't scuba dive because of just the way your ears are made." And I was so disappointed. So one of the times that I went over to visit my friends in Oahu, or on Oahu, they said they wanted to give me the closest experience they could give me. So they took me to a place called Sharks Cove. Now that sounds scary. However, it's really not a scary place. It's a beautiful cove on the island of Oahu, and it has this coral reef wall that protects the cove. Now the waves crash over into the cove, but it is contained in a way that it's very mild and safe and vibrant with sea life. So you can wade out into Sharks Cove and literally with a snorkel mask just kind of put your face in and you can see amazing sea life. And so I actually went out a little deeper than that, and as the waves crash over the reef and keep the life underneath the water vibrant, I could just float there with a snorkel mask and just watch the teeming fish, hundreds of varieties of colorful and beautiful fish. And they were all moving and living and expressing in this kaleidoscope of rainbow colors. It was just beautiful. It was kind of like standing or floating in a Technicolor Aquarium. Just amazing variety of life. And I was transfixed. I could have just floated there for hours. Matter of fact, I think I did stay there for quite a long time. Just watching this serene underwater scene just change and change and change. And I was absolutely stunned by the variety of color and shape of all the fish. Now, I know if you're a scuba diver, this sounds really quaint and sweet, but it was heavenly to me. It was heavenly. And I can only imagine the kind of majestic spectrum of life that you could have as a diver in the more deep waters in the ocean and see what you can see around the world. And I'm just considering the fish in the world. I wondered, how many species of fish are there? Because I know that not one fish is alike, even if they're the same species. So how many species are there? So I looked it up, as any good minister would do, to prepare for a Sunday talk. So I looked it up. And as of August 2016, there are over 32,000 species of fish. Now, I'm not talking about marine life. There are like 2 million or more varieties of marine life, but just fish. More than 32,000 species. And here's the kicker. Every year, scientists add to that list 150 to 200 new species of fish. So do not think for any second that creation stopped at any point. Life is forever creating a new variety of itself, and we as human beings are just trying to keep up with naming the fish. So I wonder what kind of arguments the fish have, right? Like, which species of fish is the most valuable? Which is the most beautiful? Which is the least important little species of fish? Is it better to be a big fish or a small fish? Is it better to live on the bottom of the ocean floor and just kind of stay in one place? Or is there greater value in swimming the currents in the ocean and traveling to vast distances? Should a fish choose cold Arctic water or maybe warm tropical seas? I'm sure they have big arguments like this. And they say things like, well, if you would just live the way I live and live in the ocean where I live, we would get along so much better. Or, I do not understand why you go to the surface for air. God gave us gills and we should use them appropriately. I don't get you. I don't understand that. It sounds familiar. And I know this may sound like an elementary lesson this morning. But I don't know about you, but I still find myself struggling with accepting other fishes in the sea that perhaps breathe differently than I do. Or maybe they use their tail fin to motor about instead of twirling these cool ones on the side to get where you're going. Maybe I have a problem they have spots instead of stripes. Or, here's a big one, they bite when they're intimidated instead of swimming away, or perhaps just kind of spraying some ink to warn or intimidate others. I tend to prefer those fish that kind of live here in the southern warm waters, right? I don't know what about those patriot fish that live up there in the north. But that's our lesson this morning. That's our lesson in diversity and inclusivity. Here's the deal. We often see ways that we are different from others as our flaws, as our imperfections. And we often see ways that other people are different from us as their flaws or their imperfection. And we come by that tendency honestly. Most of us were raised in some form of traditional religion, and we were taught that in order to get to heaven or be accepted by a traditional God, we've got to be perfect. That when we are not perfect, we are sinning or perhaps violating a law of God. In fact, in many faith traditions, the holiest of people aren't really having a full human experience. Right? The holiest of people in many faiths do not marry. Many of them do not have possessions, and many of them live far away from normal, everyday human life in order to be more perfect and more holy. So no wonder that we have a hard time accepting our own messiness, because we can be really messy as human beings. So we leave, traditional religion and we seek out spirituality, because spirituality is about accepting that our path is absolutely perfect the way it has been and the way it is right now. And we use that path to launch ourselves into a new, higher possibility through the power of self-acceptance and empowerment. Because here's the truth. We must accept our own diversity, our own uniqueness, before we can ever begin to accept how other people show up around us on our little piece of coral. We have to stop shaming ourselves for the part of the ocean we were born in, or perhaps how we were taught to defend ourselves, or maybe whether or not we were allowed into the best school of fish. We judge ourselves, and we have to accept the shape of our bodies, whether we're big like a tuna or tiny like a little starfish. We have to learn as human beings to accept our own diversity. And actually, even outside of religion, we were taught and conditioned to not accept ourselves as we are. We are taught that we must cover up our human flaws. Think about in school when you struggled with one subject or another. For me, it was math. I was taught, you got to figure this out, sister. You've got to hide this. You've got to somehow show a side of yourself that gets it. Cover up your mistakes. Learn. You've got to learn this. You've got to be like everybody else. We learn that we must never let them see us sweat, right? We must work to make our bodies and our hair and our resumes and our posture even acceptable to others. How many of you were taught, stand up straight? Someone's always watching you. Stand up. We have to learn to tell our stories just right so that others will love us or hire us or admit us or marry us or allow us to vote or allow us to worship. We must learn to tell our stories with just a bent of perfection. We're taught to only hang out with certain kinds of friends or drive certain kinds of cars or wear certain kinds of clothes in order to be acceptable. In the Spirituality of Imperfection, it's a book. It's one of our books of the month. It's in the bookstore. I want to share just one of the things in it. It says, to be human is to be incomplete, yet yearn for completion. To be uncertain, yet long for certainty. To be imperfect, yet long for perfection. To be broken, yet crave wholeness. These yearnings we have for perfection, completeness, and wholeness will never quite be met, because to be perfectly human is to be humanly imperfect. That's the truth for all of us. We have this paradox we live with, that we are humanly imperfect, and at the same time we're spiritually absolutely perfect. And that's what we come to spirituality, to this teaching, to find. We come here to find a perspective on our lives that allows us to accept our human imperfection and understand that whatever is happening in our lives, however imperfect it may seem, it's perfect for what? It's perfect for our souls. We've come here to evolve, and we have to have all these messy, human, imperfect experiences to grow and to learn. And if we can accept our own imperfection, then we can accept the imperfection, the ever-evolving path towards wholeness of every other fish in the sea. Ernest Holmes says this in the textbook. He says, in the inner sanctuary of our own nature, hidden perhaps from objective gaze, nestles the seed of perfection. So if we have a seed of perfection in this inner sanctuary of our own nature, so does everyone else without exception. You know, I teach that spirituality is about self-esteem, about opening ourselves up to the possibility of actually nourishing and watering that seed within us, that seed of perfection. Because spirituality is more of a journey toward acceptance than an attempt at perfection. Self-love. Self-love and acceptance is the key to growth. Without self-love and acceptance, you cannot move forward in your life. And without loving yourself and accepting yourself, you have zero chance of loving and truly accepting anyone else. So when I witness myself having judgment kind of creep into my heart and into my mind, what I have to remember is that I am actually judging myself. I project what I don't love about myself and judge about myself. I project that on to other people, sometimes entire groups of people. Whatever I don't find lovable about someone else out there, I must remember that that is my inability to love that part of me, because there is nothing that is out there in anyone else that is not also within me. That is the truth of oneness. That is what we believe, what we understand. You know, I've used this example this morning of fish because it's easier for our hearts and our minds to open up to the idea of accepting diversity when we talk about fish instead of people. Right now in our country, many people are experiencing great upset because other people are not aligning their actions and opinions with values that we hold dear. And one of those values seeming to be threatened is diversity and inclusion. but we must be careful. As a group of people here, as a community, we already know we deeply value diversity. We must be careful to not shut out of our hearts others who are still learning that value, those still on the journey of the self toward inclusion, those who are still frightened by the other, who would rather swim away than encounter differences. For if we do that, if we shut them out of our hearts, how are we different? If we unfriend those who do not share our opinions, or we make them wrong without even listening, we must be doing the very same thing they're doing. Inclusion means inclusion. We're all in this co-creation of the human experience with every single other person on the planet. Yes, even those people who vote differently than you do, or people who solve problems differently than you do, or believe in different ways of worshiping or being in the world. I don't have all of the answers. I don't. I do know that one answer is prayer and one answer is love. And actually, those are the answers. Whatever actions you take, and I encourage you to take actions, whatever conversations you have, and I encourage you to have conversations, whatever you post, and I encourage you to post, make those actions, make those conversations, and make those posts loving and prayerful. Demonstrate visibly your value of diversity and inclusivity. Because guess what? As people look at what you create, they have a window into the mind of the Creator. Value and include everyone, period. I'm going to paraphrase another paragraph in the book, Spirituality of Imperfection. There is both love and fear in the world, but the line separating love from fear runs not between nations, runs not between institutions or between groups of people or even between individuals. The line that separates love from fear runs through the core of each nation, through each institution, through each group, and most tellingly, through the core of each human being, through each one of us. And that line between love and fear cuts through the reality of our limitation between love and fear. That little crack is right there in the middle of our hearts. On this side is a loving response, and on this side is a fearful response. Maybe that's the crack that Emerson talks about when he says there is a crack in everything God has made, because each one of us responds to some people, to some things, to some situations, to some differences with love and compassion and patience and understanding. And every single one of us still responds to other things, other situations, other people, and other differences with fear. Where is that crack in your soul? And as we strive towards greater and greater diversity and inclusivity, may we continue to take long, hard looks in the mirror at our cracks. As that line that we walk between the response of love and the response of fear. Where does that run in your heart? Because that is your growing edge. That's where Spirit's calling you forth to value more deeply diversity and inclusion. We know that there's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. We know that. Only one life expressing perfectly in a wide variety of individuals and creatures and all the fishes of the sea. We know that it's the life of the divine. May we grow to include all varieties of that one life in our hearts now and forever. I'm going to close this morning with a poem by a modern contemporary poet. Her name is Nicole Bayet. This poem is called One Sun. And I really believe it captures the truth that we are one and we are all growing together. One Sun by Nicole Bayet. Ever wonder why there are so many different colors? If we're all connected and equal, just like brothers, shouldn't our skin, our eyes, our hair all look the same? Instead, we're all diverse and no one is to blame. If people need to respect each other, then what we need to do is all become colorblind. And then all our friendships can be true. Because everyone is different. No one is the same. Everyone is special and beautiful, like a rainbow after the rain. Because people in your life, they tend to come and go. People can lie and people can hurt. However, we all can also grow. We are not so innocent, but we are all as one. One nation, one God, one great planet, working together under one sun. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Alt, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.